Hello, my name is Ayana Majabe, and welcome to The Artist Pivot, a weekly conversation with artists about their current pivot, past pivots, and every pivot in between. On this episode, I am joined by Tavia Riveé, who was a performer, director, and former communications coordinator for the LA Chamber of Commerce. After earning her communications degree from Chapman University, Tavia returned to the arts, performing in shows including the inaugural cruise ship cast of the Disney Fantasy, Royal Caribbean's Hairspray, the national tour of Motown the Musical, and most recently, Disney's workshop cast of Aida. We discuss her decision to move out of New York City after living there for 10 years and how her creative energy has led her to this new role of cultural coordinator. Now, y'all, we had some technical difficulties, but we made it through. Here's our conversation.
So, hey, girl.
Hey, girl. How you doing?
I am good. I'm good. A little hungry, trying to put up with this internet. The Lord is, you know what? The devil is testing us today, but the Lord, he is faithful. And
Come on. Okay. Always, honey. Because y'all will hear this podcast today.
Amen.
Okay?
Amen.
Okay. These internet issues we've been having, these mic issues we've been having. You gonna hear us today.
He will not stop this message.
He won't.
He will not stop this message.
You will not stop it, sir. Oh, I love it. Yes. But yes, how are you doing? What's up? What's going on in your life?
Nothing, girl. I am over here. I am on the West Coast. Well, not coast. I'm in Vegas. I fled New York. What was that? May? You know, we'd been stuck in the house in that pandemic for 2 months. I said, you know what? I got to go home. I got to get out of here. So our lease was up in June, and my father is out here retired in Vegas. And so I was like, okay, well, he needs somebody to hang out with. So I just came on home, which was difficult because I with the way that the industry was going, I didn't know if or when I would be returning to New York. So when I left New York, I was leaving with the intention of not coming back, which was really depressing. It was just, you know, I had kind of just resolved that maybe New York wasn't right for me anymore. I had been there for 10 years, and right as things were about to pop off, the pandemic happened, and it didn't look like Broadway was coming back anytime soon. So I was like, you know what? I think maybe God is trying to tell me something. Let me go home, save my ducats, and figure something else out.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think we all kind of had that thought when the pandemic hit that was like, oh, okay.
Right. What do we do now? Right. Exactly. Like, okay, so are we going to be on unemployment forever? Like, and you know, it's so funny because I think back to March when everything first happened, and we were so hopeful. You know, we were like, oh, by May, right? Like, it was like, oh, we'll be back by May. Oh, yeah, we'll have, you know, I'll be able to go on. I was, you know, had tours and things lined up. I was like, oh, by the summer, we should be fine. And it's like, wow, we're not even close to the finish line. And it's been all these months. It's kind of surreal thinking back on the moments when we were so hopeful. And now we're just like, yeah, nah, it's real.
Girl, I know. It's so real. It's so real. That hopefulness we had of like, oh, yeah. Okay, we're leaving New York. Great. I'll be back in like 3 months.
Like, I'm just going to go home for a few weeks. By the time, I'm going to go home, hang out with my family. You know, like there was a luxury. There was an excitement. I don't want to say excitement. That's not the right word. But there was a bit of a relief when it first happened, because I know a lot of people who had been hustling nonstop, right? And there were a lot of people who were like, I was kind of praying for a break, but nobody anticipated this. You know, it's that thing. You got to be careful what you ask God for. You got to be real specific. Right. Because he has a sense of humor. He, she, they have a sense of humor. So yeah, we got the time off.
We did. We most certainly got the time off.
Just a little bit more than we anticipated. But yeah, here we are.
Right. Here we are. Yes. With that time off. Yes. But that's true. That's our life, right? Is that hustle in the city, or even, not even New York. If you're an actor in, LA, Atlanta, Chicago, performer in general, that's our life, is the hustle. And we most certainly got the break. And I remember thinking myself that it was like, oh yeah, I'll be home for a couple weeks. Like, it's like I'm in between contracts. You know how you come back, oh, okay, I'm home for a couple weeks and then I leave again.
Exactly. Yeah, that was exactly what it was. And I I actually got I'm pretty sure I had COVID. At the time they couldn't test me, but Broadway shut down on March 12th, and on March 14th I had a fever of 103.
Wow.
And so it was the kind of thing, March, it was still so new. We were still so naive about what exactly it was, and nobody had the resources. I was living in Harlem, and I I just remember like that entire week I was in the middle of a workshop, and that entire week I had been feeling a little fatigued, but I just
Hmm.
thought that it was the dancing. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
it's probably just because I'm moving so much and we're working hard and I'm exhausted. Um, but I didn't have like the traditional. I didn't feel sick or anything. I never lost my sense of smell. At least that entire that week. And
Hmm.
then I think when Broadway shut down and I had a moment to stop, and my body was like, no, winch, you're sick. Like something is wrong. And
Right.
so I woke up that Saturday morning with 103 fever, and everything that happened that weekend was kind of a fog. And then it was gone. The fever went down. I called urgent care that Monday and was like, I had a fever this weekend. I still have my sense of smell. I'm feeling a little fatigued and a little dizzy at times. And they were like, if you can breathe, please don't come in. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, okay. Okay, got it. So I just quarantined, holed up, and I was in the house. I know that my roommate and I didn't leave the house except for maybe groceries like once or twice for like 4 weeks. We did not leave the
Okay.
house. Luckily,
Right.
we've got a rooftop, so we could go upstairs and get some fresh air. But we did not leave our apartment building for 4 weeks.
Hmm.
But it was just the kind of thing where you were like, okay, well, this is temporary. Like we assumed that it was temporary. So it wasn't until a month later when I decided, you know what, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go back to Vegas, because nothing is happening here, and it was becoming more and more apparent that nothing would be happening for a while.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah,
I
it
got
was
you. And
tough.
so, yeah, yeah, I understand. I understand. That's for all of us.
And I think that it's been wonderful for some people to find new ways to keep themselves busy. I think
Hmm.
that that's kind of what happened with a lot of us who have had to now pivot. It was just like, okay, I got to do something. I can't just be sitting here.
Hmm.
I've got to find something creative to do. And it's part of our creative energy. We want to invent. We want to create. We want to have some sort of an output. And so that was exactly kind of what happened with me. I needed something to look forward to because everything that I had been anticipating, everything that I had been planning, obviously kind of fell through. And it was like,
Hmm.
okay. And I'm not gonna lie, I took a moment. It took a second
Hmm.
where I was
Hmm.
like, oh my God, what is life? And then there was another moment where it was like, okay, well, you've cried long enough.
Right.
You can't do this for the next 6 months, so, or however long this is going to last. So what's the next step?
Yes.
And I think, we were talking earlier about us all being hustlers. That's what we've always had to do. We've always had to pivot. Like you said, we've always had to reinvent ourselves, um, so that we can, so that we can survive, so that we can stay
Hmm.
busy, so that we can survive, so that we can exert our creative energy. And that's been one really fascinating thing about the pandemic is recognizing and learning all of the things I have to offer, all of the things that I am able to do, and seeing everyone else flourish in new and creative ways, things that
Right.
people probably would not have invested in prior to us having all of this free time. Um, they are now, really investing in and taking the time to learn, to do, to create, and completely discovering new sides of themselves, so that even if and when we do come back, even when theater comes back and the industry comes back, we have this whole new set of skills. We've got this whole other toolkit that we can pull from, so that in the times where things get a little rough, as they always will and always do, we
Hmm.
have something else to reach to.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that makes sense. So I know that you now have a new business. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah. So I created a role called cultural coordinator. After the murder of George Floyd, I was in New York kind of doing nothing for a couple of months. And it was also hard, for those of us in the theater industry. There was, people were doing all of these Zoom readings and all of these, lives, and were being asked. And I didn't feel like that was happening for me. I didn't feel like I was getting requests to perform. And so I was feeling a little down about that. And then, of course, I made the decision to move out of New York for the time and move back to Vegas with my family. That was like the end of May. And so that was kind of depressing. And then,
right.
George Floyd was murdered, and I was grateful to be home, but it was also very difficult because I was so far away from the community that I've known and loved and grown with for the last 10 years. Right. And so as protests and everything were happening across the country, I was seeking ways to be vigilant. I was seeking ways to contribute. And as, hashtag Broadway is racist and all of the exposure that was happening regarding our industry, our theater industry, I really wanted to take a look and say, well, where can I be useful? Where can I be resourceful here? What can I do to help out? And I started doing research. I've always been, I got my degree in communications from college. I got a degree in communications with a minor in PR. And that's kind of what I did before I got back into the theater and entertainment industry. I was a communications coordinator at LA Chamber of Commerce in Los Angeles. And so I was looking and listening to all the stories and the testimonials that people were speaking about in marginalized communities. And a lot of it just continued to repeat itself, right? A lot of it sounded the same, as far as not having a resource, having to advocate for themselves, not feeling like they had anyone to go to, not feeling like the production understood some of the micro behaviors that were oppressing them,
Right.
And then being villainized when they did speak up. And so I started doing some research on intimacy coordinators. And intimacy coordinators became very prevalent after the Me Too movement. They had existed before, but they became very popular after the Me Too movement, when a lot of women were speaking out about how they had been violated or mistreated on set. And so I started studying that model, and I was like, that's what we need. That's what we need in our industry. That's what we need in theater and entertainment in general, is somebody in a third party, a neutral third party, to monitor and mediate and be an advocate for the performer or anyone of a marginalized station, anybody in a non-dominant group who may feel muted or oppressed or villainized in some way. And so I kind of reached back into my little communications toolkit that I hadn't used in quite some time and built this role. And the crazy thing is that I was like, I remember at the time, you remember the beginning of June after George Floyd was murdered, everybody wanted to build something, right? There was all these coalitions and collectives and, groups and all of this stuff. Everyone wanted to be of service and everyone wanted to lead the charge. I've never considered myself an entrepreneur. I've never really wanted to be. My mother is a Mary Kay director. She's on her eighth car?
Yes.
Seventh or eighth car. And she's always trying to, Tavia, if you want to sell Mary Kay just to make a little money. I'm like, I am not a salesperson. That is not what I want to do at all. I don't want the responsibility of owning a business, having my own business. That's nothing that I ever wanted to be a part of. So when I developed this role, I took it to Equity and a few other groups who, kind of were heading their own thing. And I was like, this is an idea I have. Do you want it? And everyone was like, oh yeah, maybe. And perhaps. And, oh, well, we could use it if it looked this way. And after a while, I just kind of got discouraged. They weren't no's. They weren't deliberate no's. They just, they weren't strong yeses. And I knew that it was something that was necessary in our industry, you know?
Yeah.
And after talking with Bliss Griffin at Equity, she pretty much encouraged me and set me on an action plan to build my own business.
Right.
And so I kind of I took it on. I filed for a DBA, which is like one step under LLC. And I started speaking with multiple, with intimacy coordinators of color, the diversity editor, other people and individuals who kind of do something similar to this work, and created a role. I had my friend put the information on my website, add it to my performing website, and just kind of I put the information on Facebook, like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I can, what I can be for you. And I realized, I'd actually, when all of this was happening, and I think I forgot to mention. So yeah, when I was coming up with the structure and listening to all of the testimonials, I remembered last summer, I worked on a show at New York Musical Festival called Freedom Summer. And it was directed by a Latinx woman, written by two young white men from Baldwin Wallace. And it's the content surrounds 1964 Mississippi, two white men and one black man who were killed in 1964 Mississippi. So the cast was half black, half white. Okay. And I came in as an assistant director. The director was a friend of mine, and she was like, I could use your eye and your ear on this. Can you, come in and help? And I was like, absolutely, I'd love to. So I walked in as the assistant director, really anticipating just kind of being in the background, and ended up taking on a much larger role in communicating, kind of translating to a degree, editing content, moderating discussions regarding racial sensitivity and cultural issues that were in the script. There were times where I had to go to the writers and be like, we don't talk like this, like we would never say this. So, I ended up kind of consulting them on some of the edits that needed to be made in the script, and provided some script adjustments. I remember moderating a conversation about the use of the N-word, and one of the Black actresses was speaking vehemently about some of her experiences and feelings, and, and I had to later kind of translate for the creative team. This is what she was feeling in these moments. I don't want you to be intimidated by this behavior. I don't want you to feel nervous or be unnerved by that. It was not explosive or hostile or volatile towards you. This was speaking to her experience. And I think there's a way that we can wrap that into the content, and so it ended up being a really wonderful experience. I think that I ended up being a valuable resource for both the creative team and for the actors. And so as I was building the structure, I really recalled that situation and how beneficial I think it was for everyone to have kind of a dramaturgical, somebody that worked on multiple levels as far as the racial content was concerned. And so, it wasn't like I just created the role and was like, oh yeah, this would be a good idea. I'd actually done it before. It was like, I've actually done this before. I know how this should look and how this should work. And I think that we need to implement it in as many entertainment spaces as possible.
Yes. I mean, I agree with you 1000%. And I actually remember seeing that Facebook post from you, and I was like, oh, I need to speak to her. I was like, yep, yes. About things in our industry and having the knowledge, of like, well, this actually isn't appropriate. And there are times that I know I haven't actually spoken up, and I know something was inappropriate, but for the fear of getting fired, or for the fear of, okay, I did the show, but now I'm blacklisted. Because unfortunately, as Black women, if we stand up for ourselves And I'm not saying it with an attitude. I'm saying it just like I'm speaking to you right now.
Right.
But if I call somebody out on
Right.
something, oh, she's angry, she's upset.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was just telling you that this is inappropriate, and I was telling you how I felt about it, a word in the script or something I had to do with another partner.
Yep.
I was just telling you how I felt.
Yes. But that
Mhm.
feels like hostility,
It
right?
does, yes.
Like to a certain, to some of the dominant group is what I refer
Mhm.
to them as.
Mhm.
It feels like hostility. And
Right.
so my job, my service, and what I hope to bring to these spaces, one, I don't think an actor should ever have to advocate for themselves.
Mhm.
That's really
Mhm.
scary.
Yeah.
And if they choose to do that, absolutely. There are people out there who feel comfortable doing that. They should never have to. In the same way that, working with an intimacy coordinator, a woman should never have to tell you on set that she doesn't feel comfortable having the entire crew there as she exposes her breasts. Like
Mm.
she should
Yes,
never
yeah.
have to say that. There should be
Mhm.
somebody there to create those boundaries and somebody that she can speak to comfortably without feeling like a tyrant.
Right.
So yeah, the actor should never have to advocate for themselves. And because I studied communication and interpersonal communication, conflict resolution, and all of that, I know how to kind of quell what can, I know how to de-escalate
Mhm.
situations. So
Mhm.
in spaces where things tend to get, and I heard so many heartbreaking stories about, people who were, I call it the burden of enlightenment, right? So when you're the
Mhm.
token Black person in the cast and everyone wants to ask you about this one cultural issue, right?
Right. Mhm.
That's exhausting. Number one,
Yes, it
it's
is.
it's emotionally exhausting. It's distracting. If I'm educating you, I can't focus on my work, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And even more, my response can sometimes be deemed hostile or offensive. My
Mhm.
my response regarding my Black experience, it can be offensive for white fragility. And so then it create, and I heard so many stories like that where people again were villainized because they told the truth or they spoke up, even like you said, speaking in a very calm and rational tone. But it
Mhm.
feels, and it's like nobody should ever be put in that space where they feel like they'll no longer be able to work because they were creating boundaries surrounding cultural sensitivity. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. And
Right.
so if I can at all um, serve that area and kind of ease that discomfort, that's
Mhm.
that's really all I want to do.
Mhm. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. That is
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, sis.
I
All
like it.
right.
I like
I
it.
love it. I love it. So
And like I
mhm.
kind of just close myself off to the world sometimes because it's a little necessary for my mental health.
Right.
Those first 2 weeks in June, when the protests were really high and everything was happening at that time, I really had to focus on my mental health because it was just
Mhm.
overwhelming and it didn't feel like it was going to get any better. I had just left New York. Black Lives Matter was on the rise. COVID was not being dealt with. It was just too much. It was just too much, and it can be really overwhelming. And
Yeah.
so I was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna stay in all alone in my own little chair, like really in my
Yes.
own little
Yes.
corner, like.
Yes. Everybody's in their own little corner right now.
Really, like I just need to stay here by myself and shut out the world a little bit.
Right, right. No,
Mm-hmm.
that's fair. That's fair. What would you say to performers now? We're still in a place of we don't know what's happening, but how would you say, I guess, and this also might be a personal thing for you, like how do you keep your lamp lit, keep your joy and your peace and just the hope that, okay, I'll get on a stage again, or I'll get on set again, or I'll get in front of an audience again?
Mm-hmm. And not to sound cliche, but God, nothing
Yeah.
but God,
Mhm.
nothing but God. And I know that everyone has a different spiritual path, and I'm not necessarily religious by any means, but I know a lot of us grew up in the church,
Mhm.
and I definitely, had some time away, but
Mhm.
especially when this pandemic hit and things, contracts started to fall off one by one, dreams and aspirations that I had had for years that were finally coming to fruition were lost. And I really just had to get on my knees and pray and say, God, I can't, there is nothing that I can do. Only you can give me strength. Only you can guide my steps. And I keep saying, when people ask about the pandemic and all of that, while this year has been difficult, don't get me wrong, it's difficult. Like, it's, even with faith, it's hard.
Yep.
It is hard. But there was a divine series of events that happened that I think are leading us to something greater than we could ever imagine.
Right.
And, when I look at how the pandemic happened, and then, everyone being home and available for the fight when George Floyd was murdered, and really having the time and energy to commit and devote to changing and advocating for, the worth of all lives and of people of color. That wouldn't have happened if we were all still going about life as usual,
Right.
And so I think that there is a divine series of events. And like I said, I've just been, every morning I wake up and I'm grateful that I am home with my family and I am safe and I am provided for, and, I'm not struggling or stressed in that way, at least. And then I ask him to just guide my steps today, because I have no idea where I'm going. I have no idea what I'm doing. Even when I was building the cultural coordinating, it was like, God just guide me. And I feel like he did. The people that I have encountered, the things that I have created. Like I said, I'd had no intentions on building a business, and I just filed for a trademark. Like, that was not the plan. But he just put certain people in my path. He put certain opportunities in my path, and here we are. So for me, it's God, it's family, it's therapy. Girl, I've been going to therapy. You know what? Again, but by the grace of God, I started therapy 2 weeks before the pandemic.
Girl, I started my kind of in the midst, like April. And let me tell you, me and my therapist,
honey, besides the fact that that's the only way I know what day it is. That's the only time that's the only way I know what day it is. I'm like, okay, it's Wednesday. Okay, it's that's because I just talked to Rochelle. That's how I know. I just talked to Rochelle. Me and Rochelle got in a conversation. But yes, so, and again, something that I might not have had time for or really put the effort into if life was going on as usual, right? I may not have committed to getting my mental health together and really examining things that had been an issue for quite some time. And so therapy, God, family. And, I also think allowing yourself, we're allowed to mourn about this. I think, especially in the beginning, there was this urge for everyone to create and be, creative and do all of these wonderful things. And, oh, this too shall pass, and don't be upset, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, this sucks. Like, this, it sucks.
I can be upset about this.
And like, for a while I had a schedule. It was like, okay, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to be productive. Tuesday and Thursday, I'm going to allow whatever emotion to do what it do, and if that particular day it meant staying in bed and binging The Good Fight, then that's what it was. And I wasn't going to feel bad about that or guilty about that. And because we lost a lot. We all did. We've all lost a lot. And we need to be honest about what it means to mourn that loss.
That's so very true. So very true. Oh, yes. That's it. Okay. Cut and print. No. But Tavia, I just want to say Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your pivot right now with your new business. And what I need to say to you is that I acknowledge you, I celebrate you, and I uplift you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me, and I love just chatting with
So you're
you. It was
welcome.
good
I
to just
know,
talk
me
to
too.
you.
Yes, I know, I know. It's great to talk
Thank you
to
so
you.
much for having me, and I'm so proud of you as well.
Tavia, thank you so much for sharing. And I want to highlight a few things. First, finding guidance in this time wherever you choose to find it. And second, tapping into your creative energy to keep your light burning. Thank you again, Tavia, and thank you for tuning in. I'll speak to you soon.